Alright, we gotta talk about Will Levis. We've talked a little bit about the Titans already this offseason, and there is a reason DraftKings has Tennessee's over-under wins total set at 6.5. The roster just isn't that good, but there are still some good reasons to actually watch the Titans this upcoming season, and it's really Will Levis. It's a big year 2 for him, and he's already starting to make a bit of noise at training camp. There's one throw specifically that's just been going all over the place on Twitter, and that's something we've already seen from Levis. His great plays are just that, great. But the real question is whether or not he can actually be consistent. His rookie year was exactly what you'd expect, nothing too crazy. He was simply in the process of getting used to the new league. But now it's actually time for him to try and put it all together, and from reports, it sounds like he's looked pretty good in training camp. I do think it really helps to be entering an offseason as the clear-cut starter and getting all of the first-team reps. Ryan Tannehill is gone, and Malik Willis is pretty obviously not the future guy at this point. So I'd imagine that alone is a lot of pressure off of Levis. Now he just needs to develop as a young quarterback, and it's really up to the Titans to put him in the right situation to succeed, and I think they're definitely trying to. The Titans have pretty clearly tried to put better players around him, especially at wide receiver. Yeah, I know DeAndre Hopkins isn't exactly the guy he once was at the peak of his career, but hey, this is D-Hop we're talking about. The dude just had another 1,000-yard season and scored 7 touchdowns. Hop definitely fell off a bit in Arizona, but he was good again last year despite all the problems that Tennessee had. And he's really the perfect safety blanket for a young passer like Will Levis. He really is someone that Levis can just throw the ball up to that he trusts. And the Titans have done a pretty good job actually building behind just D-Hop. I think it's safe to say at this point, the Treylon Burks experiment is coming to a close. And that whole situation really is just unfortunate. The Titans traded away A.J. Brown during the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft, essentially just to replace him with Burks, a decision that everyone, including myself, was hypercritical of. And it's looking like we were all right. A.J. has gone on to thrive in Philly. But meanwhile, Burks is just another underwhelming wide receiver on the depth chart in Tennessee. So coming into this season, the Titans knew that they had to figure out the wide receiver room past him. Obviously, D-Hop's still there, but past him, it could be Calvin Ridley, who's going to be staying in the AFC South after he was picked up by the Titans in the offseason. Ridley really did have a ton of expectations last season on the Jags, which might have been a bit tough on him. He was coming off of that suspension for gambling, and everyone was wondering what he would do, and he ended up being pretty good. Ridley broke the 1,000-yard mark, but his expectations were way higher than that for sure. Regardless, he was still good, and now he's on the Titans, and he really does have the chance to potentially become a number 1 wide receiver. Then there's Tyler Boyd, who is again a great wide receiver. He was great in that wide receiver 3 role for the Bengals behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and now he's pretty much back in that same exact spot. The Titans have a solid group of receivers and some pretty well-known names, even if they are past some of their best years. It's absolutely an improved receiver room, and I think that's going to be great for Levis, but that still doesn't exactly mean the offense is set up for him to succeed. The biggest blow for the Titans from last season is definitely Derrick Henry. Henry has really been the leader in most of the Titans' offense for years now. No matter who you were going to replace him with, it was going to get worse. But the Titans definitely tried their best to replace him with Tony Pollard. Pollard was expected to just take off last season. It was his first season as the primary back following the departure of Ezekiel Elliott, and it did end up being somewhat underwhelming. He wasn't terrible at all and still broke the 1,000-yard rushing mark, but if you watched him play, he just wasn't as good as he was the year before. But now he gets another shot on another team, and who knows, maybe we'll get to see a lot of Tyjae Spears too. But unfortunately for them and Levis, the offensive line is still pretty bad. But it should be better. At least, I really do hope it is. The line has been awful, but you can't say the Titans haven't tried to fix it. Last year, it was Peter Skoronski in the first round, and this year, it was J.C. Latham. The Titans are definitely trying, and signing Lloyd Cushenberry should help too. The offensive line just has to be better. It's really near impossible to develop a quarterback with a trash offensive line. But interestingly enough, the Titans' new head coach Brian Callahan surely knows a thing or two about how to. He was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals and helped develop Joe Burrow. And guess what? His line sucked too. Yet somehow it still worked. But is Will Levis Joe Burrow? Probably not. Levis has a lot of raw talent, and I don't think that's something that anyone would really disagree with. I just don't know that at this point, I really believe in him. But he could certainly change my mind during the season. I wasn't entirely sold on Jordan Love before last season, and he went on to definitely prove me wrong. And I really do hope that Levis can do the same, but I just don't know if he can. I have a tough time really evaluating Will Levis. There are a lot of highs and lows to his game. Sometimes he really does look incredible and like he could actually be the future in Tennessee, but when he's struggling, it gets really ugly. There's a lack of consistency in his game that he really needs to clean up, but the potential is there. The arm strength alone makes him just such a fun prospect, but there's a lot of issues that need to be fixed. And who knows, maybe they can just all fix themselves with a better line and better weapons, but only time will tell. Luckily though, we aren't flying blind going into this season. We did get to see him for 9 games last year. And as far as rookie seasons go, it really wasn't too bad. He had 8 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. We saw some flashes, and it could have been a lot worse. But at the end of the day, he was just a rookie. And now he gets a full offseason knowing what he's getting himself into and getting first team reps. Now obviously Levis isn't the only quarterback on the roster, but I don't really think there's a chance outside of an injury that Mason Rudolph could somehow steal away his job. And like I said before, I think it's safe to say that Malik Willis is definitely not the guy. What's interesting though is that Levis was only a second rounder last season. Granted, he was taken with the 33rd overall pick, but still, in theory, every team passed over him. When you look at him as a prospect coming out of college, he almost surely would have been a first rounder in this past draft. Levis was 10 times the prospect as Michael Penix and Bo Nix, who both somehow went in the top 12. You could even make some arguments and compare him to JJ McCarthy and Drake May. Yet again, he was only a second round pick, which just doesn't make any sense. Levis has a real chance to turn into a good NFL quarterback, and it's really surprising that the Titans were even able to get him there looking back. With all that being said, it is still probably going to be a learning year for the Titans. But if they can come out of it just knowing whether or not Levis is the Titans' future, then I think that's a win. But unfortunately, they are going to be in contention for being one of the worst teams in the league. The offense just has a ton of question marks, and even if Levis pans out as being the guy, that doesn't mean the other things are suddenly fixed. It also definitely doesn't help that the defense isn't any better either. It's really just 2 weak units together, and that's going to lead to a long season, I think. Ultimately, this season isn't going to be about winning. The Titans really just need to figure out if Levis is the guy and give Brian Callahan the grace of a full season to adjust to being an NFL head coach. I really don't anticipate the Titans being very good at all, but if Levis can make a jump in year 2, then that's really all that matters. Brian Callahan is obviously going to be the main guy running the ship and being in charge of the whole development of Will Levis, but new offensive coordinator Nick Holtz is also going to have a huge part in that. He actually went to high school with Brian Callahan and went on to get his first coaching job in Nebraska under Bill Callahan, his dad. He worked a bit with Andrew Luck at Stanford and was with the Raiders for a really long time with Derek Carr starting. Last year, he was the passing game coordinator for the Jaguars and obviously worked with Trevor Lawrence. Holtz is a guy with a ton of experience, and I think it could definitely help Levis develop into a pretty good pro quarterback. Outside of this season, Holtz and Callahan have really only been on the same coaching staff once for a single year in Oakland. Otherwise, Callahan has gotten to coach a few pretty good quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, and even Peyton Manning. Oh, and I can't leave off Tim Tebow, of course. He finally gets a shot at being a head coach. And what's really cool, his dad is his offensive line coach. And hopefully he can fix it, because it's been rough. It honestly may be the single biggest thing hindering the development of Will Levis at this point. The Titans do have some major issues to address, and that's why I don't think they're going to be very good in 2024. But I am excited to watch them this season, specifically Will Levis. I don't know if he's actually going to get there, but he is a guy that I think has the tools to be a good NFL quarterback, and it's pretty clear that the Titans at least believe in him to an extent by bringing in weapons to at least give him a fighting chance. But the big question still remains: will it actually work?